It's a podcast. It's a podcast. It's a podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Fantasy and Other Stuff podcast. I hope you're doing well. Today, I want to talk about a feeling, a very specific feeling that I think a lot of readers will relate to. It's something that I think, especially if you read a lot of like big series or just anything that you spend a lot of time with characters, I think this is a feeling that a lot of people will relate to. I think especially if you're someone who has like a real passion for stories, this is probably something that hooked you into them way back when you were a kid. And that's the feeling of being so connected to not just the story itself, but to its characters, to its world, to like the whole experience of just being in that story that really draws you in. And whenever it's over, whether or not the ending is happy or sad, there's like this empty feeling, of just, well, now it's over. You spent so much time with these characters on their adventure. You went through so many things with them. They start to feel like real friends or real family to you. And then the story's over, and even if it was a happy ending, it's like a heartbreak, It's a heartbreaking moment when you finish something and there's no more. There's just no more of it, right? And it's something I experienced very early on when I was a kid with Harry Potter, which is something I talked about in just the last episode, my connection to that series. Why I would read it over and over and over again is because I loved all the characters so much and I didn't want to finish. I didn't want it to be over. So I finished book 7 and I immediately go back to book 1. And that's the great thing about stories, right? If you feel connected to something like that, you can just start it over again. You can do the whole story again and just be back in that world, be back with those characters. And I think that's something beautiful about art, and it's why people have comfort series. They have things they keep returning to and things that they keep reflecting on, things that really speak to them and that they sometimes people make their whole personality about it. Hell, I have an entire half sleeve dedicated to One Piece because that's one of those stories that I just feel so connected to the Straw Hats, and I love the world that Eiichiro Oda has created and all the themes and messages in it. They just really align with who I am as a person. So it's a story that will stick with me forever, and it's something I will probably be rereading for the rest of my life. I probably will never stop fully experiencing that story. And right now I'm lucky enough that it's still coming out, so I get a new chapter like every week or two. So that's a story that still hasn't ended for me in a lot of ways, although one day it will, and it will be devastating. I will be absolutely a wreck when that series ends, right? And I think everybody has something like that. Not everybody, maybe, but I think most readers or people who are like really into stories have at least one thing like that, right? And I'm curious to know what those are for you guys. If you want to leave a comment, I would love to see and hear just what series have spoken to you like that, because I know it's different for everyone. And sometimes I see people talk about series that I've never even heard of, that they're like, oh, I've read it 7 times. And I'm like, what? That's crazy. But I mean, I'm not judging. It's just like, it's so crazy to me how many series there are out there that speak to people like that. And there's a specific reason that I'm addressing this topic today, and it's actually a real life reason outside of books. So if you don't know, I'm a traveler. I'm a world traveler. I've traveled probably 2 years total now. I was living in Vietnam for a year, teaching English, which I was living there, but like I was also traveling around quite a bit. So I kind of count it all as travel in its own way. And outside of that, just a lot of going around in different countries, and I love it. It's like one of my biggest passions in life. And for me, what makes that experience so special, the experience of traveling, is not just experiencing other cultures and seeing incredible things, having amazing experiences. Obviously, that's all super important, and that's part of why this is on my mind right now, because in a lot of ways, when you take a trip, it becomes its own little story. It becomes its own little adventure, much in the way that reading a book series is sort of like its own little adventure in your life. For me, that's what traveling is. I can remember so many details so vividly of my trips, and what I love about that is that it invigorates me. It makes me feel like I'm really living my life and that I'm doing something meaningful. But there's that other flip side of it, which is similar to what I was just talking about with books, which is that I'm a lover boy. I love people. I love places. I love things very, very easily. I kind of give my heart away freely a little too easily. It's a problem sometimes, but I wouldn't change that for anything, because that's what life's about to me, is loving things and loving people. That's why I think I'm here on this planet, right? And I just got done with the EDM festival, which I talked about in my weekly update. I went to a big EDM festival here in Thailand, which is where I am right now, and it was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. I had so much fun. It was amazing. I can't even begin to describe how incredible that experience was. And it wasn't just, again, the music and the atmosphere and the all the things I did while I was there. It was the people. It was I met so many incredible people. I was there alone. So I went there by myself, and within the first 10 minutes of me walking inside, I had people approaching me just asking like, oh, are you alone? Like, where are you from? Like, have you ever been here before? And then we just started chatting. We walked around together for hours. They showed me around. They told me which DJs I should check out. And like, they just immediately brought me into the fold. Like, it's that fast. And I think that has to do with the festival atmosphere, where people are just extremely friendly at festivals. People are so giving and just, they really want you to feel at home there, which is just in and of itself something that's incredible and something I didn't know to expect at a festival. And now that I do, man, I'm hooked. I want to do more. It was, I could go on and on and on. But again, it comes back to people, and it comes back to the story that I shared with these people, these memories that we created together. And I mean, I met so many people, because that same night I met more people while I was just like dancing in the crowd, and then we ended up hanging out the whole night. Then the next day I met this person from China who was also there alone, and like we were walking around all the next 2 days together doing like it's so cool. Anyways, I love traveling, but it comes with that side effect of I met all these people, I made all these amazing experiences, and like, yeah, maybe part of it is that I'm at a festival and like I'm in this whole new location and it's like this new experience, so like my emotions are heightened. But even outside of that, like I love people so easily, and like I really love those people. Like it's so frustrating to talk about, because if you haven't traveled, like I don't know how to explain it to you. Like I deeply care about people very early on and getting to know them. And when inevitably we have to go our separate ways, because like a lot of the people I met were from the Philippines. I met that one person from China, another person from like Canada, and the festival's over and then we just go our separate ways, right? And that's the end of that story. And I've done that fucking 100 times now while I'm traveling, and it breaks my heart every single time. Every single time I have to just say goodbye to someone and like not know if I'm ever going to see them again. Luckily, I've been able to see a number of people throughout my travels a second time at least, just through going back to locations or serendipity. They happen to be in the same place as me, and that's a blessing. But a lot of people, I'll just never see them again, which breaks my heart. And it's the same feeling to me as when I finish a good book or when I finish a long series, and I'm so attached to those characters and so attached to that story. It leaves me with that same empty feeling of just like, it's over. Like it's over. Like, and it's always a happy ending for me with these people. Like I'm always like, we leave on such a good note, and like we just have this bond that's cemented forever, you know? And it's the same thing with the book, right? When you read that story, it is literally set in stone. It's in those pages forever. And now those memories they're what they are forever. That feeling will be there forever. And it sucks because it's heartbreaking. And unlike with books, I can't go back. I can't hit replay. I can't do it all over again. I get that one chance to be with those people, that one chance to make those memories with those people, and then it's over. And God, I'm getting emotional even just talking about it. It sucks, but it made me start thinking about books, because books are a big way that I view the world and how I process things. And that feeling to me is exactly the same, of just like, fuck, it's over. Like, it's over. And now what? You know, that's how reading slumps happen a lot of times, right? You finish something that's so good, that spoke to you so much, and that you were so immersed in, and you had this huge connection to, and then the next book you pick up, you're just like, well, it's not the same, right? It's just not the same, so it doesn't hit as hard. And maybe that book is great, but it's not the one you were just in. It's not that series you were just in. And it's kind of the same when I'm traveling sometimes. Sometimes I have such an amazing time, and then I go somewhere else and it's just not the same as what I just experienced. And it leaves me feeling a little bit like disconnected, you know? And it's been now a day since the festival. I'm recording this 2 days after I finished it. And it's been hard to get the motivation to like do anything. Like, and I'm still traveling, like I'm still out here in Thailand, but it's hard because now that memory's over. Anyways, this is why I'm just explaining to you what prompted me talking about this and explaining sort of my personal experience with this. And I want to talk about some of the series that have done that for me. And a lot of them are series that I've talked about a lot on my page of people, series that I mention quite a bit because to me, because like I said, it's similar to the feeling is traveling. This is like the single most important benchmark for me in terms of how much I love a series. If you can't form this connection with me as a reader, it's never going to be like one of my favorite series of all time. Some of these series do it more specifically through their characters than others, but if a series can't speak to me that way, it doesn't have as much value to me as a story because that's what I live for, man. That is what I live for, is that connection to things, that feeling of belonging and of just being in a space, a story, a memory, whatever it is, right? That's what's most important to me. And I want to talk about which series have done that for me. So first and foremost, One Piece, like I already said. I could talk about that for days and days and days. I love One Piece. I love its characters. I love its world. Just everything about it. The sense of adventure, the sense of freedom, and just the creativity and imagination that are on display. And just so many things I could talk about with that story specifically that have just really spoken to me as a person. And that's why it's my favorite story of all time and why it probably always will be, because I've never had something speak to me quite as much as One Piece. But there are a lot of other series that have done this for me too. Another one is Sun Eater. Not specifically with the entire cast, but specifically with Hadrian. I feel extremely connected to him. Hadrian is the main character of that series. I feel very close to him, which I know sounds like is a fictional character, right? But he's one of those characters that I feel like I just know him. Like I get him, and I understand the way he thinks and the way he sees the world and just his inner emotions. And because of that, it's a similar thing with the realm of the Elderlings with Fitz. I had talked about comparing those two characters in a previous episode. And part of the reason that I have for that is that I feel extremely connected to both of them. They're both first-person point of view books, but they're also series where you're extremely in the main character's head and you spend so much time with them that I think it's impossible to not form that connection with them unless you just don't like them, which that's a whole different topic we could cover, right? But I love both of them. I love both of those people. And through them, my connection to the story is strengthened because I love them so much. I love being in their head so much, even when they frustrate me, even when it's depressing. They as a person are what hook me in. They as a character are what bring me in, and it's like I'm going on that adventure with them specifically, you know? And that's also a very special thing. You know, with something like One Piece, you have this enormous cast of characters, but then to also get so intimate with someone that you're able to go on this adventure with them is something very special that I think an author can achieve. And those are two series that have done that for me, and that's the reason why those stories have stuck with me this whole time, is going through these momentous occasions in these characters' lives side by side with them. Like seeing it through their eyes is a very special experience in reading, and it's something that has continually brought me into those stories. So specifically with those two, that's why, and it's a very different reason. But like I said, I've talked about those three series countless times on this podcast, on all my platforms. Those are like three of my favorite series of all time. And, you know, I could talk about a few others that are also on this list. So one that I haven't mentioned very much is actually the Cradle series by Will White. Very different than all these other books that I just mentioned. It's a progression fantasy, which if you don't know, it just means like the character starts off super weak, and then by the end of the series, he's extremely strong. Like it's about him throughout the books getting stronger and stronger and advancing, right? And it's about like that character doing that, but it's also about the characters around him doing that. And throughout the books, the main character becomes friends with a lot of other people who are also going through their own journeys of getting more powerful, but they're doing it together, right? And it's a pretty basic story when it's all said and done. Like it's a very straightforward story, but it's 12 books long, and all of the characters are extremely lovable. So you go through this story and you get to see how these characters face hardship and adversity and overcome it continually, and how their bond and their friendship assists them in accomplishing that goal. And again, it's one of those series where like I just got so attached to that cast and to that feeling of overcoming and just progressing and like never giving up. And by the time I was reaching the end of the series, I was really dragging my feet. I was like, I don't want to finish this. Like, it became a comfort series for me because I loved that cast so much. And I loved that feeling of just, they're going to face something and they're going to find a way to come out on top. And they're going to find a way to persevere, because I think that's something a lot of people can relate to in real life, which is just, you know, sometimes you hit roadblocks and it's a lot easier to just lay down and take it. But then you read about characters who keep getting back up or keep struggling, keep working hard to get to the point they want to be. And that's a series that does that extremely well. And that's why that series has stuck with me this whole time. It's because I love these characters and I love seeing them succeed. And that's what the whole series is about, essentially. And it's also just a very satisfying series because there's something in my ape brain that like turns on whenever, you know, you see a character physically progress. I guess it's sort of like that feeling, you know, when you're playing a video game and like you level up and it gives you that dopamine rush of just like, oh yes, I advanced. Sort of the same feeling when you're reading progression fantasy, which is why I think there's a lot of crossover between like progression fantasy fans and like lit RPG fans, because it's a very linear scaling of character strength that is just very satisfying to read, right? I think an OG in this specific idea that I'm presenting here of stories that I feel connected to. So one of the early ones in my life, like I said, was Harry Potter. Another one is Lord of the Rings. I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. Lord of the Rings is a comfort series for so many people, not just the movies, the books. You can do either or. I don't really care because I haven't read the books. I'm talking about the movies for this specifically. Those characters, some of the most iconic characters of all time, and they're all just so like, they're the archetype, right? Like they are the mold for like so much fantasy nowadays. And because of that, there's this certain comfort of returning to them. And it's like, this is like the OG, you know, this is the OG. And because those characters are so iconic, and because that world is so like aesthetically pleasing, like the minute I hear Shire music and I see the rolling landscape and you see Frodo sitting underneath a tree reading a book and he's just chilling there in the grass, like, tell me that's not the biggest vibe of all time. It is literally the chillest, most dope vibe humankind has ever achieved. Okay, there is no more peak living than that, right? So every time, it's something that maybe because I was watching them when I was a kid too, like every time I was sick, I would watch the movies. Anytime it's like really dark and snowy or whatever, I'm like, I want to watch Lord of the Rings right now. It's just the ultimate comfort series, right? It's just so full of hope and life and just meaningful connections, and it's just if you've watched the movies and you're a big Lord of the Rings fan, you understand. It's just like the most iconic representation of what an epic fantasy adventure can be, right? And it does it so well and so perfectly introduces you to these tropes, into this magical world that you just get to exist in for, 9 hours while you're watching the movies. And every time I watch them, it's the same. It never goes away. It's been, I don't even know how long since I first watched them, 15, 16 years. And it's still every single time, it just hits me. I'm like, man, I'm there. I'm in Middle Earth with those characters right now. So that series, again, another series that every single time I finish it, and there's that final shot of Sam just walking into his house, it just waterworks, dude, every single time, because I love those characters and I love that world so much. Oh man, even just imagining it. If you get that feeling, you get that feeling with Lord of the Rings specifically. That series specifically. You understand what I mean with that final shot. And then also the shot just before it of Frodo stepping onto the boat, and then, oh my God, it's so good. It's so good. Those movies are so fucking good, man. Oh God. That's just amazing. Yeah. Another series that I think kind of fits the criteria for this, even though I have issues with the last book, is the Stormlight Archive. It's a little bit different with that because it's not over yet, technically. We're only at the halfway point. But I had a similar feeling when I reached the end of book 5 of just like, well, that's the end of this part of the adventure, right? Like, that's just all these characters have come so far, and now they're at this point. And it kind of is the end of an arc for them. And I had that sort of similar feeling of just like, oh shit, well, now it's over. Like, now that series is over. And like, I will end up rereading it. Even though I had issues with book 5, eventually I'll read through the series again. And I'm glad that it's not like totally over yet, but I had a similar feeling for that. Another series that did this for me was the Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee. And that one specifically, I think, because it covers so much time. It's only 3 books, but I think it covers like 30-something years of time, and you're watching these characters progress through decades of their life and see how they mature and how they change. And you get to see their children, and you get to see how their connection to each other changes, and in some ways strengthens, in some ways it weakens. And I think Fonda Lee does such a good job at showing that progression and like immersing you in that progression that by the end of the series, it felt like I actually had spent all that time with those characters, and it left me with that same feeling again of just like, dang, like that's the end? I don't get to see what happens to these characters. I mean, it was a perfect ending, don't get me wrong. The end of Jade Legacy is fucking phenomenal. But again, it just left me that feeling of like, oh, this story's over. Like this I don't get to be with these characters anymore. I was so immersed in that family dynamic with them and with their, especially there's this character, if you've read the series, Andon, who starts the series as like I want to say he's like 16 or 17, and by the time the series is ending, he's like almost 40 years old. And for me specifically with that character, he goes through some experiences because he goes abroad at one point and he's like studying abroad, and seeing how that shaped his life and how he matures out of that. I don't know, man. It hit me really hard. And then seeing kind of where he ends his story at the end of the series was just like, oh man, I don't know. It just like, it really hit me. It hit me really hard. And that was one of those series that it just, every one of the characters in the cast, their progression and their arc through the series was something that felt natural and organic, and that ended up, knocked down my camera, ended up speaking to me in a lot of different ways. So that's another series that just really hit me in that way. And I think there's a lot of, outside of books, there's a lot of anime that have done this for me. So like Attack on Titan did that for me. Naruto did that for me to a lesser extent. I'm trying to think of which other ones I finished that have kind of spoken to me that way. A lot of them aren't finished that I feel really connected to. And a lot of them I didn't like the ending to. I have problems with like the ending of Naruto, but it was good enough, and I spent enough time with those characters that I was still sad when it ended. There's a lot of series like that, I think, because anime tend to run a lot longer than with a lot of other series. I guess to a lesser extent, I could say Game of Thrones, although the ending of that was dog shit. So like, which is part of the reason it's so frustrating, right? Is because I loved those characters and that story so much, and then for it to end on such a sour note kind of left a bad taste in my mouth and made me not want to redo it, which sucks. But if you delete the last 2 seasons, that feeling is still there for me. Like, if it had been as good as the rest of the show at the end, yeah, I probably it would be one of those series that would stick with me for that long, probably, and that I would immediately want to reread. But it's become something I don't think about as much because I hated the ending so much. I'm trying to think if there's any other major series like that have talked to me in this way, and I think there probably are, and I think there are probably more anime that have done that for me too, but these are the ones that stick out to me the most. These are the ones that when I reflect on storytelling as a medium, these are the ones that have stuck with me in this way, ones that I have felt so connected to that it feels like the end of an era when I finish reading them, and it's something that kind of leaves me feeling empty when I'm done with it because it was so special and now it's just over. And I hate that feeling. I hate it. I hate that feeling of heartbreak, and I hate it more in real life because with the story, you can just start over. You can just go back to the beginning. It won't be quite the same as doing it the first time, but it's still there, you know? It's still exactly the same as you left it. But in real life, unfortunately, those memories are just memories, and you can't redo it, which sucks. But anyways, I just want to talk about this because I've been a big emotional blubber boy for the past few days, and I needed to talk about this specific topic today. It sucks. I love traveling so much because I hate this feeling specifically. But again, I would never trade it for anything. This is the stuff that makes life worth living to me. And, you know, I'm good. I'm chilling. Don't worry about me. I like the heartbreak. I hate it, but I love it at the same time. If you're a big traveler, you know what I mean. So anyways, that's about it for today, folks. Expect a weekly update soon. I'm going to be in a new location next time. I don't actually know where. I probably should decide. I have to leave in 2 days, and I haven't booked anything. But that's the fun of traveling. So you'll see. We'll figure out together. You'll see me in the next video. I'll be somewhere new, and it'll be an experience. So until then, folks, I hope you're happy and healthy. I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.